Today I'm talking with Jez Humble from ThoughtWorks Studios. Jez is the product manager. Is that right, Jez?
That's right.
For Cruise, the continuous integration product from ThoughtWorks. So really, let's start by getting Jez to say a little bit more about who he is and what he really does.
Right. So, like you say, I'm product manager for Cruise. What that means in practice is that I do a little bit of everything. In theory, I'm supposed to kind of define what Cruise does and look at the market, see what the competition is, and generally own the vision for Cruise and where we're going with it. In practice, I end up doing kind of a bit of that, a bit of analysis, some sales, some support, and occasionally a bit of development, much to the consternation of the rest of the development team.
I get similar accusations with my team. So can you tell us a little about Cruise and what actually makes it special as a product?
Right. So Cruise is not just a continuous integration server is the idea. I mean, there's plenty of CI servers on the market. We're also trying to do something in the release management space. So it's not just aimed at developers and development teams. It's also aimed at QAs and operations people. And the idea is that you're getting software from check-in all the way to it's about getting software through the last mile, not just, QA passed, but live, working, released in production. And that's really kind of the source of many of the distinctive features of Cruise, like the release pipeline, the deployment pipeline functionality.
All right, cool. And how long have you been actually using the product yourselves? I mean, there must have been a point at which you managed to switch off of cruise control, I guess, and actually eat your own dog food. How long have you been doing that now?
For quite some time. So we started developing Cruise back in December of 2007, and 2008 by Spring Festival, Chinese Spring Festival 2008, which was March, I believe, we were self-hosting on Cruise, and we had an internal ThoughtWorks project hosted on Cruise as well, which was one of our first customers. So we're very serious about dog feeding, and we try and make sure that we have projects within ThoughtWorks dog feeding as well. So, for example, Mingle uses Cruise in order to build Mingle. So yeah, I mean, it took us about three or 4 months to be self-hosting with Cruise, and we've been using it ever since.
That's pretty sweet. I mean, get three months to actually get a usable product. That's kind of nice.
Yeah. I wouldn't go as far as usable, but it got usable pretty quickly.
Yeah. Very good. I think it's one of the things you look at some of the other products, you can tell the ones that are extensively used by the developers and the ones that aren't. And a lot of the little features you see, I think, are the kind of thing that you would never actually think to put on a product sheet, but the kind of thing that just evolves as your developers get annoyed with the product or not,
yeah.
and fix it. And so it's a lovely sign for a product when it does that.
Yeah.
So I think you already touched on this, that Cruise doesn't just do CI. I mean, do you think that the CI market's going to support all the vendors that we have right now? You've got the economic downturn, even though I really don't want to mention that because everybody else is, and also sort of free competition as well from increasingly more impressive things like Hudson. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's true, though. We do have a lot of competitors out there. I think, actually, to be honest, it's not something that worries me tremendously, partly because I think we're not actually that far up the curve of adoption of continuous integration. So I think there's a lot of developers out there, a lot of development shops that aren't using any kind of CI at all right now. So I think there's a lot of space for expansion into that market. I also think that, we're not really necessarily direct competitors with the Hudsons of this world. I mean, yes, Cruise is a CI server, but it's trying to do something a bit more than Hudson in terms of the pipelining, especially that whole piece around release management, actually deploying, testing, releasing your software. So in many ways, we complement tools like Hudson. I mean, if you have Hudson already, that's typically very much focused at development teams. It's not focused at helping QA teams and operations people. So we can kind of complement what Hudson does in many ways. And actually, I don't think there's that many products which are really aiming at solving that whole problem all the way through to release in the same way that we are.
Sure. I mean, yeah, in my day job, I come across that problem all the time, and I think that's interesting that you're able to say that the two products complement each other. Would there be some kind of direct integration at some point, do you think, or would it always be kind of a hands-off thing where the two products just happen to work on pieces of the same workflow?
I would actually like to see some direct integration. I mean, I don't think we'll ever have a Hudson plugin, but I think what we would have is some kind of integration piece where you can take artifacts that are produced by some other system and then visualize them being released all the way through to production. So something like that, where you can plug into something which produces kind of artifacts of one kind or another. And in fact, that's the kind of direction in which we're going in Cruise anyway, of being able to take artifacts of one kind and put them through this kind of pipeline process.
All right, lovely. Do you think the continuous integration market is going to sort of get a bit of a boost with every business sort of focusing on cutting waste at the minute? Do you think there'll be a direct kind of correlation between that? I'd like to think so, but
yeah, I mean, I'd like to think so too.
Cynical part of me thinks we'll just do other mad things instead. Are you able to sort of go on?
All right. Obviously, I'd like to think that we're going to make money as well, because otherwise we're all in big trouble. There's kind of the theory and there's the evidence. I mean, in theoretical terms, I think it does make sense actually to start investing in these products. What you see is a lot of companies, they're starting to lay off people. Unfortunately, the result of that is that people are having to do more with less. So you can't have a couple of developers kind of pottering around hacking up CI servers in the same way that you might have been able to before. And so it actually makes more sense to invest in a product than it might have done when there were less jobs on the line. So it's an unfortunate consequence, but obviously it's kind of good for us. And we've seen that reflected in sales. Obviously it's been tough, but it's not been nearly as bad as we were expecting it to be. There's still a decent pipeline of sales for Studios products. So, I mean, as far as we're seeing, actually, our play, and it's always been our play, as you know, having been at ThoughtWorks, is that we do the whole agile lean thing, and that should help make businesses more profitable and more efficient. And that play seems to be working for us at the moment.
Oh, great. Very good. So, are you able to say who's using Cruise? There's sort of,
right.
Do you have a reference site or two, or some names you can drop that you have there?
Unfortunately, so I did check on this before I joined the chat. I'm not allowed to say who are our customers at the moment, but you will be seeing some case studies in the next few months as we move towards 2.0. I can tell you we have got more than 3,000 downloads so far. So we launched in July of last year. So we've been going for about 9 months now. We've had 3,000 downloads since then. We do have some Fortune 500 companies in there and some big name brands, but I can't tell you specifics yet.
Okay, sorry. Cool. You have to try. So, I mean, ThoughtWorks has been incredibly prolific in pushing the continuous integration space for a decade now, and you have the three main flavors of cruise control now: the Java, the .NET, and the Ruby version, as well as a few things that fell along the wayside. What is ThoughtWorks' interest in those now? Is that kind of just something for your engineers to get involved with it as a kind of a part-time occupation now, and Cruise is now the main sort of focus of your innovation?
It's an interesting question. Certainly, all those three products are still in use, and they're still very active projects, I should say. Even within ThoughtWorks, there's projects that use those things. I mean, it's interesting working with ThoughtWorks because actually one of our most difficult customers is other ThoughtWorkers. They're very sensitive about what they use, and rightly so. I mean, as a consultant, you have a duty to choose the best tool for the job at hand, and that might not always be Cruise. I mean, Cruise is only 9 months old; it's only at version 1.2, so we don't have all the things we want there yet. And there are circumstances in which we might say, well, actually, maybe you should use CC.NET, or maybe you should use one of our competitors, indeed. So that does happen, and that's great feedback for us. And the reality is that all those open source projects are still in use. We still have committers at ThoughtWorks on those projects, and they continue to do a great job. ThoughtWorks doesn't actively put money into those products. It provides infrastructure for some of them. And I'm pretty sure that we won't be putting very much in the way of money into paying for developers to work on those products, but they're certainly still in use. Obviously, I'd like us to get to the stage where Cruise is sufficiently better than anything else that you wouldn't consider using them, but we're not there yet.